KXOK 102.9 FM and simulcasting. That means they'll both be at the same place, same time. And on the My Genre Radio Network, every following Monday to Friday at 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. If you want to see the show, you can also go to the usradionetwork.com and all the stations are there. So if you want to go there, it's there. Also, we're pleased to say that if you go to Mark, is it KXOK.com or
Either.
if you go to KXOK.com on YouTube, you can see the show. It'll be right there. It's beautiful. I just looked at it. I'm so excited about that. So anyway, our guests today, which are going to tell you a little bit about themselves, are actually the co-hosts of the show, but we thought it'd be a nice thing if we interview you two today. We thought it would be a nice way to do this. And so, ladies, welcome to your show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We'd like to start with the audience getting to know you. So, we've listened to the entree about the show. I know you're very passionate about it. Why don't you tell us about yourself? Who would like to begin? Tara?
Well, my name is Tara Evans, and I am the founder and executive director of The Covering, which is a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to servicing men. We are currently opening up a domestic violence facility for men who are victims, and we have several programs that will be implementing for men who are victims.
Okay, and I'm Sharon Jackson. I'm a clinical social worker and a teacher of social work, the bachelor program. And I've been interested in the issues of men for my total clinical career. So I'm happy to be partnering with Tara to develop the clinical portion of the domestic violence shelter for men.
Well, ladies, welcome to your show.
Thank you.
That's the way to go. All right, so how did the two of you become interested in addressing men's issues?
Well, this is Tara, and I started working in child welfare, assisting children who were in abusive situations in their homes, and noticed that fathers were really absent from the whole child welfare system. And so I started doing research on it and volunteering at different male organizations, and really just became interested in servicing men and making sure that they received the assistance that they needed.
And I think clinically, through my clinical work through the years, when I would work with men in mental health issues, when men talk to you personally and they open up to you therapeutically, I found that many men had issues of domestic violence that weren't being addressed. So I did a little bit of research on it and found that the domestic violence narrative agenda doesn't serve men that well. So I just did a little bit more research on it and then connected with Tara. And we both have the same passion and the same interests, and we were working together to create our program.
How did you two connect? How'd you meet?
Well, Sharon was actually my professor in college.
Oh, how neat. So that's a nice way to connect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you both feel that there was because of the therapy you did you believe there was a topic that America needed to have a wake-up call to?
Right. Yes, absolutely. It's the domestic violence really started around the 1970s. And when I was doing the research, the narrative has always been that women and children are the victims of and men are perpetrators. So the programs and services and the research is up to this time have not included men or children who are victims of female perpetrators. And that's a great injustice that we need to start talking about and addressing in this country. We think of all the men are victims of domestic violence, and that we need to start talking about it.
I think there's an important issue here that really it's time. Let's go forward a little bit. So what is the Men's 911 show about, and what topics are you going to cover?
Well, the Men's 911 show is about creating awareness of issues that impact the lives of men. The Men's 911 show will cover topics that may be sensitive for men to talk about. So we want to bring those issues to the forefront so that men who are embarrassed or fearful about talking about these issues, that we're here to help them, and we're bringing that information to everyone as a whole so they'll know about it.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And we'll be covering a lot of different topics. We're going to be starting with domestic violence, but also men's health issues that get overlooked. And Tara can talk about the social injustices of men. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Sure, I can definitely talk about
Yeah.
it. Sharon keeps putting you on the spot. Man,
No, I know. I think it's. I'm glad she's doing it.
she is. She really is putting me on the spot. So as far as legislation and campaigns and awareness, nothing is really being done to address the issues that men are experiencing as far as domestic violence. It's really a social injustice because men are also victims. Everything is centered around females. We look at the research; it's all geared towards female victims, and there's nothing that's being done for male victims. And so it is a social injustice. It's a gender bias because men don't have the same resources that women do when they're victims. Law enforcement a lot of times overlook them. They don't give them the same respect and compassion that they would for females, and it's causing men to suffer in silence with this issue. And we need to bring awareness to it.
Oh, I agree. And then I think we were talking at one of our sessions about men's respite houses and places for them to go and feel safe. I'm not sure if that's one of our questions or not. I don't think it is. But are there places that if men say, I think I'm a victim, they can go to? Can you give us some samples?
Believe it or not, there are only two safe houses for men in the entire United States. One is the Taylor House in Arkansas, and the other is the Family Place in Dallas, Texas. And if there's any men out there who do need help, you can contact the Family Place in Dallas at 214-941-1991. So that's an injustice when we look at the number of resources and specific facilities designed to meet men's needs. There's only two compared to the 1,000 for women. That needs to be addressed. Our goal is we'd like to create, we call them a respite house, because men are primarily psychologically and emotionally abused by women, where women tend to be violently abused by men. So it's psychological safety that men need, and we see that more as respite than as a safety. So we call our house a respite house, so we can focus on that. And that's another reason why the way the women abuse is more psychological and emotional. They don't often show bruises, so it's difficult to prove, and there's really no laws against it.
So with that thought in mind, why is serving men important? I'd like to get both your comments on that. Either one. Go ahead, Terry. Go.
Well, servicing men is important because there are no services really available for them. They're being overlooked. And men, as being the foundation of families, we want to really focus on strengthening men so that we can preserve families. Men are the basis for humanity, right? And so we need men and women, but we have to make men strong. We have to make men feel comfortable. We have to make them feel like they're worthy.
It's a weird question, but are there men that do you feel men should do that for other men, or does it really make any difference whether a woman's helping men or a man's helping men?
Well, I'll take that. I think it's difficult for men to talk about their vulnerability just publicly with other men, or even acknowledge it with themselves, because we say socially men are supposed to be tough. I mean, we all know that. We all know women who have this behavior, and nobody's talking about it. And I think it needs to start with two females, and that's what Tara and I believe, that we are the voice. And hopefully over time, as we start talking about this and educating people, that other people will be comfortable talking about it. But it has to be a woman that starts this conversation because men are not allowed to speak in our society about it.
I think it's, I've been a victim a little bit, but enough to feel the pain. And I honestly didn't know who to go to. I didn't know who I could talk to about it. And yeah, I thought some macho guy's gonna say, "Get your act together," be a man, man up, all that stuff.
Exactly.
Right,
It was hard on me. It was really hard.
right,
So I got that gut feeling that somehow you got to do it. There's got to be an easier path for men. Uh, I had a comment here that we were going to talk about different topics. Could we just drop back a second and talk about the different types of topics you're going to have on your show? Just some of the variety, so they know it isn't just one thing. It's a lot of things.
So some of the topics we'll have on the show are, we'll talk about child support. We'll talk about legal issues that men deal with. We'll talk about finances for men. We'll talk about parenting and co-parenting, relationships.
health issues
Yes,
and mental health issues. Um,
yes.
No, yeah.
yeah, all
Well, you're
those.
going to have some guests from around the country and the world that are going to call in. What kind of guests are you going to have on the show?
Well, we are having next week.
Yeah, next week we're going to have a male victim who was a perpetrator and got out of the relationship and was on his way to recovery. And then we will have a man, believe it or not, from Sweden who was in a 25-year marriage with a violent partner, female. And he has created his own program called the Viking Program. And he's going to talk about his story and how he uses his Viking philosophy to help men. And then also we're going to have the author of the book, uh, Women Abuse Men, Ann Silvers, she'll be on, and lawyers and some doctors. And
And organizations, we'll have Fathers and Families Coalition of America here. We'll have the YWCA with their male initiative. They're going to come and speak with us. We'll have someone from child welfare to talk about when your child is put in the system as a man, what do you do? Especially when you really didn't have a connection with the mother and you didn't know that there was something going on in the home that caused your child to be put into custody. And so how do you get your child out of custody? What are the steps you need to do? Even if you were not in a position to take your child, if there's someone else in the family that can take your child. So we'll have child welfare here. We will have, let's see, who else do we have in here?
Mark, some executive directors, well, the ex-executive director of the Taylor House for the Men's Shelter, and a professor who's writing a book of stories.
Yes, then we'll have someone from Fathers United to Raise Awareness. It's an advocacy group. They're going to come and talk about some of the things that they're doing to advocate for the rights of men.
No, I think it's excellent. I think the idea in my mind is to let people know what resources are available to them.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes me feel really good.
Yes.
There is a question here, which is, why is serving men important? And ladies, either one of you can answer these, or you can both answer these. Why is serving men important? And they're ruffling through their notes, so you
Yeah.
see it on YouTube.
Yeah.
That's okay. Notes are good.
Yeah, I need notes because I'll forget
I need
everything.
notes.
Yeah, I need notes.
Yeah, me too.
And serving men is important because men are being overlooked when it comes to social services. There are thousands of programs for women, and there are literally just a few programs for men. And so it's important that we put programs in place for men to also be empowered and supported.
I think one of the things is because nobody else is doing it. Nobody else is really addressing men-specific issues.
Why do you suppose that is, Sharon?
Right. Well, yeah,
There's no money in it.
there's
There's
Really?
No money?
Yeah,
Oh,
There's
there's
no
no
money
money.
for men.
there's a good one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And I think men socially, again, I call it the three P's. When I look at men, I call them, they're driven to be providers, protectors, and then they like their playtime. And so that's really the driving forces for men. Men don't want to be vulnerable. They want to provide and they want to protect, so they can't be a victim, but they are. So that's part of it. So we have to change that too. We have to show the vulnerabilities and then show how they need help and change that dialogue, that understanding.
Well, I think that's wonderful. So how will you be serving and helping men? Why don't you talk a little bit about the family and the respite house too? How will you help people?
Right. The respite house is, we're creating that. We have a specific model that addresses men's needs.
What does that model look like? Is it a place that have a bed and meals and
Right,
professional help, or
right. It's a counseling, they get a caseworker, they get an assessment. We're looking at all the health pieces to that, the mental health pieces. And we also have to consider that children have needs too. Some of these men are fathers and they have children that they want to protect. Those will be available too. We're focusing again more on the psychological and emotional needs of men than the actual physical safety. Um, because um, the way women abuse is not often even considered illegal, believe it or not. And oftentimes men don't even know they're being abused. So that's a whole different dynamic.
It is.
Yeah,
Really is.
it really is. So that's part of the program. That's how we're different. And domestic violence started back in the 60s or 70s, and that was created by feminists with a feminist narrative. So domestic violence treatment historically has been created for for women, and still is driven by that, by women. We're just not really looking more closely at what men's needs are. And part of that is driven by academia too. There's very little research on abusive women and men who are victims. So you have to have that research. So universities and academia has to start researching this and admit that it's a problem
right?
so we can get better programs and services and funding.
So let's flip a little bit to men and domestic violence. Um, what do you mean? We're going to go to break after this. What do you mean when you say men have been overlooked in domestic violence service and treatment? What does that mean?
That kind of goes back to what I was talking about. The feminist narrative for domestic violence going back to the 70s has been that women are victims and men are perpetrators. And the family violence studies that were taking place in the 1975 and 80s showed that women were just as violent as men. But feminists argued against that, saying that women weren't violent, and if they were reacting to toxic masculinity or the patriarchy, or they were reacting to being abused by the man. Basically, sending the message that women can't be violent. So, why that's important to understand that prevented the programs and services being created for men specifically, because that narrative is what goes up to Washington, D.C. and funds the programs and services. So that's why we need the research. And people will talk out statistics. Well, I will to this day, the statistics are wrong because they will be wrong until men start reporting their domestic violence. Men are being abused and they're not reporting it. So any statistics that someone wants to give me about men victims is wrong because men aren't reporting it. And number one, they're not reporting it because the way women abuse isn't always illegal. It's emotional, it's psychological. It's not a crime. They'll isolate the man, psychologically manipulate him, break him down. Um, to me, that's criminal.
I was reading that like they'll wake up their husband in the middle of the night and start disorientating and screaming at him,
Oh,
Yeah.
or they'll steal his money, or
yeah.
they'll call the police, make false accusations, any way they can unnerve and tear him down.
help debilitate the man. And a lot of times men, when they tell their stories, they'll talk about a woman waking him up at 2 o'clock in the morning, hitting on him. And the things that they do, they don't clean the house, or they don't cook food that's edible. One man said that she broke his glasses deliberately and claimed it was an accident, so he couldn't read. So any of those ways to make a man weak, to break him down, is what they do. And it's not always obvious to the man what's happening until he ends up nervous, anxious, has a mental breakdown, then there's some realization.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
And then when they try to leave, sometimes the woman will say she's gonna kill herself. So he has children. He doesn't want her to kill herself. He doesn't want her to leave. So he just continues to put up with the abuse.
Well, Mark, I think I want to go to break. Can we do that? Okay, so we're going to take a break and talk to some of our people that back us on these programs. And when we get back, we'll continue with the Men's 911 show. Okay? Okay, he's playing commercials now.
How are we doing, Sam?
We're doing good. We got about 25 minutes when we come back from break or less. I think you're doing good. How do you think you're doing?
want to become
Still just a little nervous. I've got to really work myself through this.
Yeah.
You need some more water or something?
I need something with sugar in it.
Is there soda?
And produced and hosted over 1,000 radio
I wish you had an extra one of those to drink. But
Yeah, I don't.
that's okay.
Did you want, and it's sugar free. Did you want to drink that?
No, I wanted something with sugar in it.
It's sugar free.
Okay. We lost Mark. Where is he?
Okay. Okay.
Oh my God.
You taking a picture? Is that what you said?
Doctors can't find it, put you on the air nationwide daily.
Let me check something real quick. Kara, don't be honest with me. We're gonna go.
I think we're doing
I
much
think we're
better than
good.
last time.
Yeah.
It's just gonna take some time.
Hold on, let me get this.
Is there a soda machine or something in here, Mark?
What's that? You're sorry?
Is there a soda machine or something in here?
You need some water?
No, he needs some.
No, he wanted something sweet.
I don't know, Stan. I don't know where there's.
That's okay, don't worry about
Are
it.
you sure?
I think I'll be all
Of course.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Stan, I don't know where there is any soda.
Don't worry. And Stan, between breaks, the shows are running all late. So are you okay with being here at 2:30?
To guide you through the uncharted waters of health and wellness, and to give you a voice.
It's gonna be, what kind of car? Hold on, what kind of car do you drive? Oh, I'm not done. We got another 25 minutes to go.
You always wanted to write your own book, you don't know where to start. Publishing concept, a publishing company located right here in Lakewood that offers everything.
It's just the opposite. Well, I mean, I don't, you're okay to take me home?
Ebook and iBook layout, graphic design, cover design, ghostwriting, typing and editing,
All right.
distribution, marketing, and more for an affordable price. Visit Publishing Concept.
Okay, all right, let me, we'll wrap the show up, then I'll head out.
Threats and coercion.
All right, thank you, Tom. Great.
Wow.
He's, my driver's gonna get me, we gotta break the show at 2:15-ish today,
Okay.
okay? So I'm going out.
Oh, you're a cough. No, I mean, you look like you need to sleep.
Yeah, I'm just,
This is the first time you've done this show. That's what you've been.
never again.
Yeah.
What?
No, I'm not.
Okay, we're gonna break the show today at 2:15-ish.
Okay.
Okay, Mark?
Okay.
My driver's outside now.
Want me to go get him and bring him in?
He said he's okay waiting outside. What do you think we should
Yeah,
do?
that's fine.
Just make sure I get on with my driver so I don't have to wait home, you know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Thanks. No, we'll resume.
250 offices worldwide for a free initial consultation. Call Charlie Scarlett, business broker, or Billy Rowan, business broker, at 636-400-6100. Again, that's Charlie Scarlett.
Getting
close here. Or Billy Rowan,
All right.
business broker, at 636-400-6100. Okay, ready?
Ready?
You're on.
All right, and welcome back to the Men's 911 show with Tara and Sharon. That'll be coming to you every week here on KXOK 102.9 FM and also on KWRH 92.9 FM. It'll be Wednesdays at 3 p.m. if you want to tune into the show, and then nationwide on My Genre Radio Network Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. Ladies, welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, we got a few more questions to go, so let's go for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you mean when you say men have been overlooked in domestic violence service and treatment?
Right. I think we were talking about that, about the feminist
Mm-hmm.
narrative.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah. Let's go to the other one.
Okay.
Why don't men report their abuse?
One of the main reasons is that it's difficult for men to express their vulnerability. And it's interesting, and it's their vulnerabilities that the females will use against the man to gain control of him. So, and then female abusers also emasculate their victims, and they use their vulnerabilities against them. So the man is disempowered to even report it, and even if he did, there's no services. So I gave the example of one man who was his wife was abusing him domestically, and they went into marriage counseling, and the counselor didn't even address that he could possibly be abused. The advice that he was given was that he needs to be more attentive to his wife's needs. So that's the misinformation that men are given to when they go get help. That's not even being assessed that he could possibly be a victim.
Well, it leads to this question, which is why can't men protect themselves from female abusers?
Right? You know, most oftentimes they're not even aware they're being abused.
Yeah.
Because the way that women abuse really isn't illegal, right? It's emotional, it's
Well,
psychological.
the question is, what is the difference between female and male abuse? Tara, what do you think?
Well, the difference is that men, when they abuse, they're more physical, whereas women, when they abuse, it's more emotional, so and psychological.
Okay.
So you can verify when a woman is abused because she usually has some type of mark or something. But with men, you don't see it. You don't see the abuse.
Okay.
So that's how the abuse is different.
How about you, Sharon? You want to
Yeah.
comment to
I
that?
think it's a little bit different. All abuse is the same, but her whole goal is that she'll target the man because there's something that she wants, and her main goal is then to isolate him typically. And what we call data mining is she looks around his social network to see who's going to be the biggest threat against her, and then she goes to eliminate them. So I tell men, if your social world, whose world got smaller? If your world got smaller, it's a real good indicator that you're in a domestically abusive relationship, because their whole goal is to isolate you and just get total control. And it's very covert. It's not always obvious.
You want to comment?
Well, yeah, I just want to talk about how, when men are abused, they're embarrassed. They don't want to tell anybody about it. They're in denial. They don't even think that they're being abused or they don't think that it can happen to them.
Mhm.
And then society, when we think about society and abuse, law enforcement is really not trained, to look at a man as a victim. When he arrives on the scene, he sees a hysterical woman crying, and they automatically go to the woman, thinking that, something's wrong with her when in all actuality, it could be the man. And so sometimes when the police shows up, regardless of if he's the victim or the perpetrator, he's going to jail. And that's the issue.
Women also do use intermittent reinforcement, so she'll love bomb the man, give him a lot of attention, and then isolate him and start cruelty. So it's like the pattern, the cycle of violence. So the man just can't wait for the time when the intimacy and the love bombing is strong, and he'll tolerate that because men are driven by that. It's the primary force.
Wow. So, ladies, what are the warning signs for men?
I think one of the big warning signs is, and we say this a lot in domestic violence, is whose world got smaller. Have you had people that came before her that are no longer in your life, that you had good relationships with, people you loved and cared about you? If they are no longer in your life, that's a really good indicator that you need to take a look at that relationship. Because that's one of the things that she's going to do is try and isolate you from people who do care about you. And if you feel like you're losing a part of yourself, if you feel like you're losing your mind or you're getting depressed and you can't figure out what's going on, that's another sign.
Anxiety is also another sign.
Right. Or if you find yourself making excuses for her behavior to try to understand it, that's another. These abusive women will also play victim. It's kind of they're going to be a victim of something, and then a man, he's driven to be a protector. He wants to protect her against whatever's victimizing her, and that's another sign too.
So, if somebody hears this show today, where can they go get a hold of you for help?
They can give us a call at 314-709-6868 or reach us at www.coverthefamily.org.
Okay. Now, ladies, why is it important to talk about male victims of domestic violence? Either way.
Well, basically just to bring awareness that this is an issue, so that we can, get some funding for programs for men, so laws are changed, more advocacy for men who are victims. I think it's important that we bring awareness and, just let everyone know that this is an issue that's affecting men. Men are committing suicide at a higher rate, and it's not because of mental illness, it's due to relationships. And so this is something that we really need to address.
We also call the untold stories. Men don't have any place to go to tell their stories. And that they need to create a dialogue and a way to men can start talking about this amongst themselves together, and when they go to their healthcare providers to get services, we just need to start talking about it and educating.
So you almost answered it. I was going to say, how can we help men and their children? I guess you got any other thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think one of the issues is if a female is abusing her partner, there's children impacted by that as well. So are we really addressing those needs of those children as well? And we need to educate about how women abuse and stop making excuses for the behavior, or stop claiming women have emotional problems. That's why they're abusive. And just address the problem straight on.
And create more support systems, maybe support groups for men who are victims, and their children. I think that's important as well.
Guess what?
Good.
We asked all the questions.
Right?
Well, I think we're okay to wrap up, Mark. Thank you. Thank you, ladies, for being on your new show.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Stan. Thank you for giving us the opportunity, Stan, that you've seen that this is a problem and you want to educate. That's so important. You can't do it alone.
I do.
Thank you, Dr. Stan, for sharing your story as well.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, I believe what you're doing. All right, ladies, well, you have a wonderful day. I'm going home and take a nap.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
All right.
What do you think, Mark? How did
You're
it
good.
Did it go good, Mark?
Yeah, it was
You
really
think it
good.
went good, Mark? I'm just not sold on
Very
this. I'm
good.
just not myself with this.